Hello and welcome to our today's discussion on Pareto optimality, or at times it is called Pareto efficiency. Now, what is Pareto optimality or Pareto efficiency? It is an economy is in Pareto optimal state when no further changes in economy can make one person better off without at the same time making other worse off. Now, the situation is it is that state of economy, that state of an economy where no person can be made better off without making someone worse off. In simple words, it is an ideal state where we are working upon the satisfaction level of a consumer in such a way that he gets more of the satisfaction while the satisfaction level of others is not reduced. As simple as that. We will be increasing the satisfaction level of one customer, one consumer, while we will not be reducing the satisfaction level of the other. This is what is Pareto optimal state. Now, before we dive into the concept of Pareto optimality, let us make an assumption to start with that we'll be using a 2 by 2 by 2 model. What is this 2 by 2 by 2 model? It says there are only two consumers, then there are only two factors of production, and only two commodities are being produced. So these are our basic assumptions on which we will be building up on the Pareto optimality condition. Now, what is Pareto optimality? It is a phenomena at level of economy. So it cannot happen in isolation. It cannot happen in a way that I can improve upon the satisfaction of consumers and I do not talk of satisfaction level of producers. It cannot happen in a way that I work upon satisfaction of producers and I do not work upon the product mix, what everyone is producing. Because ultimately, what the producers will be producing will be consumed by the consumers to derive satisfaction out of it. If the producers are producing A and B, then the consumers will be consuming A and B. Both will be consuming. Now, this composition, the consumption should be such that we have a situation where we could improve the satisfaction level of first consumer while the satisfaction level of second consumer is not reduced at least. There is an improvement in satisfaction level of one while there is no difference for the other. If satisfaction level of C2 is also going up, perfect, we are moving towards Pareto optimality. But if satisfaction level of C2 is going down, then we are not moving towards optimality. So this is the idea of Pareto optimality, that we will be working on the welfare or increase in satisfaction of consumers, producers, and finally product mix. So we'll be dealing about Pareto optimality in such a way that all these three are better off. We will be taking actions, we'll be discussing Pareto optimality in light that all these three should be benefiting from the situation. Now, when we are working on improving the welfare or satisfaction of consumers, that is known as efficiency in consumption or exchange. When we talk of welfare of producers, it is known as efficiency in production. And last case, when we talk of product mix, the composition of what these producers are producing, that is known as in case of product mix, efficiency in production mix, or efficiency in composition of outputs, or efficiency allocation of factors among commodities. So these are the three parameters, these are the three efficiencies that we'll look upon in order to achieve Pareto optimality or Pareto efficiency. So first of all, let us start with efficiency in consumption or exchange. So first, let us start with efficiency in consumption or exchange. Now, when does efficiency in consumption or exchange happen? It is a situation where for any given bundle of goods, it is not possible to redistribute them such that utility or welfare of one consumer is raised without reducing the utility or welfare of the other. In simple terms, we have two consumers A and B. You raise the utility for A. What can happen? Utility for B can also go up. Case 1. We raise utility for A. Case 2. Utility for B could go down. And third case could be we raise the utility for A and there is no change in utility of B. Now, if we have a look at this second case, utility of A is going up and utility of B is coming down. So A is getting better off while B is getting worse off. This does not constitute for a movement towards Pareto optimality. This definitely does not take us to Pareto optimality. Let us talk of these two cases, first and third. In first case, what is happening? A is getting better off and B is also getting better off. So I am increasing the welfare of A without actually reducing the welfare of B. So this definitely is a movement towards Pareto optimal state. What about this third case? In third case, welfare of A is going up, but welfare of B is remaining unchanged. This is also a movement towards Pareto optimal state. So we can say that case 1 and 3 are Pareto inferior states. What are we calling them? We are calling them Pareto inferior states. Why are they Pareto inferior states? Because a movement towards Pareto optimal condition is possible. This movement is possible. And if this movement is possible, then definitely the present state of affairs is Pareto inferior. So 1 and 3 are movements towards Pareto optimal state, while second is not a movement towards Pareto optimal state, because in increasing welfare of A, we are actually decreasing the welfare of B. Fine. Now, let us see or understand this concept with help of Edgeworth box diagram. What is Edgeworth box diagram? Edgeworth box diagram is indifference curves or indifference map. It is indifference map of A and B plot on opposite axis. What do we mean by opposite axis? Let us see. Now, suppose I try and plot indifference curves for A. Indifference map. Let me plot indifference map for A. How will the indifference curves be? They'll be somewhat like this, right? Let this be indifference curve 1, indifference curve 2, indifference curve 3, indifference curve 4. So these are indifference curves of A. Right? Now, what is Edgeworth box diagram? Let us see this. Now, see, what I have done is I have copied this diagram and now I will rotate it. Fine. What I have done is I have rotated it. And now let me try to put over here. Can you imagine this picture? This is exactly what is Edgeworth box. What are we doing? We have copied this complete axis system and plotted it again. So now if you see, we have A on this axis. This is the axis system for A. Then B is on this system. So these are my two consumers. And if we see, as we move in this direction, quantity of commodity 1 is increasing for A. As we move in this direction, quantity of commodity 2 is increasing for A. So this is my axis system for A. And at the same time, what I've done is I've flipped it, I've taken an opposite origin, and this becomes my axis system for B. Now, if this is the axis system, you can see that if I move in this direction, welfare of B is increasing for commodity 1. And if I move in this direction, welfare for B is increasing for second commodity. So we see that welfares of A and B are in opposite direction, and hence their indifference curves are also in opposite directions. You can see indifference curve of A, and then we have indifference curves of B. These are indifference curves of B. As far as A is concerned, we are able to make them out. This is an indifference curve, this is an indifference curve, this is an indifference curve, this is an indifference curve. What about B? B might be confusing. We'll remove this confusion. We'll try to rotate this figure so that we could understand what is happening with B. If we have a look at this, we can see that now this figure is perfect for B. Where are indifference curves of B? This is an indifference, sorry, wrong color. This is indifference curve of B, which is making sense. This is indifference curve of B. This is an indifference curve of B. This is an indifference curve of B. Is that fine? So now let us go ahead and make a fair figure of this Edgeworth box diagram, and then we'll analyze it further. We'll leave this for our reference, but we'll make a fair figure of this Edgeworth box diagram. Here is our Edgeworth box. Now what happens in this Edgeworth box? We have one consumer on one axis and we have the other consumer on other axis. And we have for A 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let this be quantity 1, let this be quantity 2. So for A, quantity 1 is increasing from 0 to 9, and for B, this quantity will increase on this axis. Here, for B, quantity 2 is on this axis, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, quantity 1 is here. Now this is Edgeworth box, and now we can have our indifference curves for A and B. Then we have indifference curves for B. Now if you see, this is first indifference curve for A, and for B we have, these are the indifference curves for A and B. Now if I connect these points where both indifference curves are tangent to each other, indifference curves for A and indifference curves for B are tangent to each other. We can see one curve is going like this, one curve is coming like this, and if you draw a tangent to either of these curves, it will be same. So these are the points where they are tangent to each other. If I draw a line connecting them, this line is what is called contract curve. Now if we talk of indifference curves for A, IC1, IC2, IC3, IC4. IC2 is definitely better has more welfare for A. IC3 has more welfare for A than IC2. IC4 is far better than IC3. So they are in increasing order. As we go outwards from the origin, the welfare of A is increasing. Similarly for B, as we go away from origin, welfare for B is increasing. From IC1, it is more in IC2. From IC2, it is more in IC3 and so on. Now, all of these points that are on contract curve are Pareto optimal. Any of these points, because not only these 4 points are where we have drawn the indifference curves. Definitely here also we'll be having a pair of indifference curves. Then there will be a pair of indifference curves at this point also. So all these points on contract curve are Pareto optimal. Let us check how. Let us start our discussion from this point. If we take this point A, or rather we have taken A, so let us call this point P. If we take this point P and we advance from P to Q, what have we done? We have advanced from indifference curve 3 to indifference curve 4. So A is definitely better off. He is getting more satisfaction. We are working on his welfare. He is moving to a better indifference curve. But what has happened to B at the same time? When you move from P to Q, what have you done? B was initially sitting on indifference curve 2. You have taken him down to indifference curve 1. So what have you done? You have increased the welfare of A, but you have decreased the welfare of B. So definitely Q is an inferior point than P. So definitely P is the best possible point, and hence it is called Pareto optimal. Against P, if we check what is Q, Q is a Pareto inferior state. Why is Pareto inferior state? Because we are improving upon the welfare of A, but in turn we are reducing the welfare of B. So definitely against P, Q is a better point. Let us check what happens if we move the other way around. If we move to R. So this is your P. Let this be R. If you try to move from P to R, what are you doing? In moving from P to R, this was indifference curve for B. This is also indifference curve for B. Now, B is moving from indifference curve 2 to indifference curve 3, IC2 to IC3. So, definitely his welfare is improving. B is better off. What happens to A? A was initially sitting at IC3. He has come down to IC2. So, A is not getting better off. In fact, A is worse off. So, point R, when we compare it against P, is a Pareto inferior state. Why is Pareto inferior state? Because B is getting more welfare, but A's welfare is reducing as a result of this movement. Fine. So we can see that any point other than P is Pareto inferior. Not only this, you could compare any points. Now, what about any point that is not on contract curve? We were talking that every point on contract curve is Pareto optimal. What about any other point which is not on contract curve? Let's say this point, for example. Let us call this point D. If we talk of this D, where are we? A is at IC3. If we talk of D, point D, A is sitting at IC3, while B is sitting on IC1. Fine? Perfect? A is sitting on IC3 while B is at IC1 level. Now, if you make, sorry, this is not D, this is not point A, this is rather point D. This is the situation at point D. Now, if you make a movement from D to Q, if you make a movement from D to Q, what happens at Q? At Q, what about A? A is at IC4. And what about B? B is still at IC1. He was initially also at IC1. Now also he is at IC1. Now if you look at these 2 points, comparison of D against Q, what has happened? IC3 for A. Let us put this subscript so that we can see which indifference curve belongs to whom. Now IC3A, what is happening with D? For A I am sitting at IC3, for B I am sitting at IC1. What happens at Q? A has moved to IC4 while B is still sitting at IC1. So if I check what has happened in this case, what has happened? Welfare of A has gone up, from 3 it has come to 4. What about B? B is no change. B is no change. Fine. So what is this state? We checked. This is a movement towards Pareto-optimal state. These states, case 1 and 2, are Pareto-inferior states. So I can say this is the situation. A is getting better off. B is no change. So D is definitely Pareto-inferior against Q. Q is Pareto-optimal against D, because benefit or welfare of A is increasing and B is not reducing. So Q is definitely a more optimal state than D. More optimal, rather we should say a Pareto superior state. Q is Pareto superior to D. D is Pareto inferior to Q. Are we clear with this example? Now let us extend this example to another situation. Let us say P. From D if we move to P, what will happen? From D if I move to P, where will A be? A will be at IC3. This is curve for A, and this inverted one is for B. Where will B go? B will be going to IC2. IC2 for B. What has happened essentially as compared to D? D was at IC3A, IC3A. So can I say no change? Okay, no change. What about B? B was at IC1, now B is at IC2. So there is definitely an increase in welfare. What is this case? This is a case of increase in one and no change in other. So I can definitely say that this is D is Pareto inferior against P, while P is Pareto superior against D. So one thing is for sure, that if we compare D against P and Q, D is Pareto inferior to both. D is not better off than either of these. What about P and Q? We earlier saw when we stop at P, it seems that P is the best point and Q is Pareto inferior. When we stop at Q, we saw that P looks like being a inferior point and Q is the Pareto optimal point. So any point on contract curve is definitely Pareto optimal, as we have checked earlier only. And any point other than contract curve will happen this way. If you move in one direction, the other one improves and the other one remains same. So definitely D is an inferior point and Q is a superior point. So I guess now we understand the first issue that we were talking, efficiency in consumption of exchange. Now if you have any doubt about how these curves came, then I'll provide a link in the description box where you can see how these indifference curves are made. What is the meaning of an indifference curve? What is this indifference map? How does this come up? You can check it in that video. Now this was our first case, efficiency in consumption of exchange. This is our first case. Second case is efficiency in production. For efficiency in production, it should be a quick ride for us, because we'll see that again we'll be making use of Edgeworth box for efficiency in production also. So let us start with efficiency in production. This is our second issue, efficiency in production. As I told, again I'll be making use of the same Edgeworth box. So let us construct an Edgeworth box and then we'll see what are the differences between efficiency in consumption and efficiency in production. So let me first plot this Edgeworth box. So here is our Edgeworth box. Here is our Edgeworth box for production. Now in this Edgeworth box, what we'll be doing is, we'll be taking quantity of first good, factor of production, and quantity of second factor of production. So what we'll be doing is, we'll be plotting isoquants. What are isoquants? Isoquants are essentially almost similar, not essentially, rather similar to indifference curves. What were indifference curves? Indifference curves are those curves where choices of consumer A are indifferent towards Q1 and Q2. He is ready for product A, product 1, he is ready for product 2, and this is an indifference curve, that he is indifferent to product 1 or 2. He could go with either 1 or either 2. Same is with isoquants. So let us go ahead and plot isoquants for producer 1. So this time we are using a little different nomenclature. Isoquant 1 of producer 1, isoquant 2 of producer 1, isoquant 3 of producer 1, and so on. And then can we also have isoquants for producer 2? Fine. Now these are isoquants for second producer. Let us give them names. Isoquant 1 of producer 2. Here are the isoquants. Now if you have a look at these isoquants, these are essentially similar to the indifference curves. Now once again, if I connect all these points where my isoquants of first producer and second producer are tangent to each other, if I connect these points, what do I get? I get contract curve for production. This becomes my contract curve. This time, because it is for production, you could call it for production. What is this contract curve? As we saw here, all points on this contract curve are Pareto optimal. Should we check it once again? If I go ahead and try to compare P against Q, if I make a movement from P to Q, what happens? Isoquant of first producer moves from 2 to 3. If we compare, we'll compare them this side, P and Q. What is the scenario? P, isoquant 2 of first producer. I have moved to isoquant 3 of first producer. Isoquant 3 of first producer. So, first producer is better off. What about second one? Isoquant 3 of second producer. At P we are at, if you have a look at P, we are at isoquant 3, and at Q we come down to isoquant 2. So, is he better off or worse off? I think he is worse off. At P we are sitting at isoquant 3 of second producer, while at Q we move to isoquant 2 of second producer, which is actually going down. So if you are making one better off and at the same time making the other one worse off, then Q cannot be called a Pareto superior state, and hence we say that P is Pareto optimal. Why is P Pareto optimal? Because Q is not superior to P. Fine. The same logics that we discussed in this case of Edgeworth box, where we were talking of efficiency in consumption. Exactly same principles are applicable in this case also. Now let us remove this and check any other point. In this case, let us make that any other point over here. At R, what is happening at R? At R, I am sitting at isoquant 2 for first. Isoquant 2 for first producer. We are sitting at isoquant 2 for first producer. And what about second producer? Isoquant 2 of second producer. So we are sitting at second isoquants for both producers. We are sitting at second isoquant of both producers. Now from R, if I make a move towards P, what happens? First producer is still on 2. From R, I am making a move towards P. First producer is on 2, 1. He is still on 2, 1. So he is neither better off nor worse off. But when you move from R to P, what you have done is, second producer was sitting at second isoquant. Now he is down to third isoquant. So definitely he is better off. Can we see it from here? He was sitting, second producer was sitting at isoquant 2. Now second producer is sitting at isoquant 3. So he is definitely better off. So against R, P is definitely Pareto superior point. What about Q? Shall we check Q also as you move from R to Q? At Q, what are your points? First producer at 3. Third isoquant for first producer. And for second producer, it is second isoquant. Now let me compare. First producer from 2 to 3. Definitely he is better off. Second producer from 2 to same place. So he is neither better off nor worse off. So Q is also a Pareto superior point as compared to R, Pareto superior. In other words, R is Pareto inferior for all. It is Pareto inferior against P also and Q also. So R is definitely not our Pareto optimality, a Pareto optimal point, while P and Q are superior to R. As far as P and Q are concerned, we have already checked, as they lie on the contract curve for production, they are definitely Pareto optimal points. If we try to move from P to Q, we see that P was a better point. P was Pareto optimal. Q is an inferior as compared to P. And if we try to move from Q to P, we again witness the same case. So in this case, we can see that it is almost same as it was in efficiency in consumption or exchange, efficiency in production. Yes, as far as technicality is concerned, as far as these points are concerned, all the points on contract curve. Now, you could take any of these other points also. They will be tangent. Any isoquant you can take. There can be millions of isoquants. All the isoquants will be Pareto efficient or Pareto optimal. Now, what is happening at all these points is, if we see, I'll take this ink, marginal rate of technical substitution. Marginal rate of technical substitution for E1 should be equal to marginal rate of technical substitution of x1 over x2, x1 for x2 for P2. This is an essential condition for, we'll use some other color. This is an essential condition for Pareto optimality. What is this essential condition? That marginal rate of technical substitution for P1 should be equal to P2. Similar condition we could have derived for this case also. So, what will be the condition? If we try to write it down over here, it will be marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2 for consumer A should be equal to marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2 for consumer B. This is our necessary condition for us to be in Pareto optimal state. Right? So these are our two essential conditions. MRTS of P1 should be equal to P2. MRS of A should be equal to B. Marginal rate of substitution, marginal rate of technical substitution. Now is the third case of product mix, that is efficiency in production mix or efficiency in composition of output or efficiency in allocation of factors among commodities. Let us start with our third case. So here we start our third condition. We have talked about efficiency in consumption for, we have talked about Pareto optimality from perspective of consumers. We have talked about Pareto optimality from perspective of producers. Now let us talk of Pareto optimality from perspective of product mix. What do the producers produce? What quantities of each of the products are they producing? Let us go ahead and delve into it. Now, for efficiency in product mix, we need to understand the concept of production possibility curve. What is production possibility curve? In very simple terms, it is what are the various combinations of two products that I can produce. See, the resources are limited. So if I wish to produce more of one product, let us say more of product 1 and product 2. If I wish to produce more of product 1, then I will have to part with product 2 because the resources are limited. I cannot go on increasing quantity of Q1 also and Q2 also. If I wish to increase quantity of Q1, then Q2 will have to come down. So as you go on increasing the quantity of Q1, Q2 will be coming down like this. Fine. Are you able to understand this figure? This curve is that as you go on increasing quantity of first product, you will have to give up for some quantity of second product. At this point, we were having lesser quantity of Q1 and higher quantity of Q2. But as you go on increasing Q1, you will be left with lesser quantity of Q2. This is production possibility curve or PPC. Fine. Now, if you have seen the other video on indifference curve, we saw that initially we felt that indifference curve should be like this. But when we dwelled into it, we realized that it cannot have a linear relationship. Because yes, I may be indifferent to two products up to a certain limit, up to a certain level. But beyond a point, it cannot bear a linear relationship. We saw it in the indifference curve also. Here also what we see is that yes, it looks like the more of first item you are producing, the less of second item you will be getting. So it looks like we could have a linear relationship, but probably we might not be having a linear relationship. We have somewhat like this kind of relationship. Let us have Q1 over here and Q2 over here. We have a relationship which is actually concave to the origin. Now let us see what does this being concave to the origin means. If we see that I am increasing quantity of first product. Now, when you increase quantity of first product, at that time, I allow you to increase your quantity of first product for a very minimum decrease in quantity of second. But as you go on increasing the quantity of first product, I cannot always let you have all of my second product, because ultimately I need the second product also. You can see that this is increasing. Is this increasing or not? This is increasing. If you go on increasing first product, initially, okay, I might be having a lower slope, I might not be charging you too much, but if you go on doing that thing, if you go on reducing my resources for Q2, ultimately I will charge you dearly for every single unit of Q1. So ultimately we see that the curve is, the PPC is not exactly linear, rather it is concave. Now let us talk on second issue. We are talking of efficiency in product mix. Now suppose MRPT is marginal rate of product transformation. Suppose marginal rate for product transformation is 7. That is to say that you have to part with 7 of Q2 for 1 of Q1. If you wish to increase quantity of Q1 by 1, you have to part with 7 of Q2. If MRPT is, let's say 7, and at the same time MRS, marginal rate of substitution for consumers, is, let's say 3. So there is a difference between MRPT and MRS. Now if there is a difference, then what happens is, from consumer 1, I will take away this unit of Q1. What has happened? As a first step, I have taken away 1 unit of Q1, and this unit which I am not giving to the consumer, if I drop Q1, then I can increase Q2 by 7. So how is this deal? Take away 1 unit of Q1 from the consumer. Take away, when I say take away, it means that we are not giving him Q1. If I am not giving him Q1, then I can give him Q2. Exactly. If I am not giving him Q1, because I have said that I'll take away Q1 from you. If I am taking away Q1 from you, it means that I am not producing Q1. So if I am not producing Q1, then I can produce Q2, and I can produce 7 units of Q2, of which what I'll do is I will give you 3 units. Why am I giving you 3 units? This was second step. I took it away. When I take it away, it literally means that I'm not producing it. If I'm not producing it, then I'm producing Q2, 7 more units of Q2, and I have given you your Q2. Now what has happened? I took away a Q1 from you. Your marginal rate of substitution was 3, which means that if you need a Q1, you are ready to part with 3 Q2s. But if you part with 1 Q1, you need 3 Q2s. Simple. If you need more of Q1, you need to give 3 Q2s. If you need less of Q1, you need more of Q2. It is a simple relationship. So what I did was, I took away Q1 from you. By taking away, it meant that I'll not be producing that Q1. When I'm not producing Q1, I can produce Q2. And if I'm producing Q2, For every unit of Q1 that I'm not producing, I can produce 7 units of Q2 because MRPT at this level is 7. Of these 7, what I've done is I've given you 3. So still there are 4 units in this economy. And these 4 units can be given to you for improving your welfare. Increase in welfare. So did you get the point? If my MRPT and MRS are not equal, what happens is we keep on reducing quantity of one, we increase the quantity of another, we fulfill your compensation and then provide you welfare also. So for that very same unit that was taken away from you, I have given you the compensation also and I have given you the welfare also. And if I am increasing your welfare, then definitely this state, present state of these rates is Pareto non-optimal, or rather Pareto inferior. You can see I've given you more of these. So this is Pareto non-optimal. You can see that this will become Pareto optimal. In order to make this Pareto optimal, how will you make this Pareto optimal? Is it very straightforward thinking now? If I make MRPT of, let's say, 4 and 4, what will happen in that case? I'll reduce a unit. Reducing a unit will lead to, first level I'm reducing a unit over here. Second level, reduction in this unit. If I reduce this unit, because MRPT is 4, production of Q2 can go up by 4. Sorry, this is our third step. This is your Q1 and Q2. Production of Q2 can go up by 4. From this 4, I'll be giving you the 4 that you need. Why do you need 4? Because your MRS is 4. So you need these 4 for compensation. So as a fourth step, what has happened? This went down. As a result, Q2 went up by 4 and that 4 was needed by you for your compensation. Now there is no welfare. In this case, there was compensation and there was welfare. This time there is only compensation and no welfare. So ultimately, we see that so long as MRPT and MRS are not equal, we are in a state of Pareto non-optimality. But as soon as these two become same, we reach a state of Pareto optimality. So can we have our graph for this? We'll just plot a graph for this and write down the condition for this. What is this? This is my PPC, production possibility curve. Here I have Q1. Let us change the ink. Here I have Q1. Here I have Q2. Then there is my indifference curve also over here. This is indifference curve. This is PPC, production possibility curve, indifference curve. And this is the point where we write down our condition. What is our condition? Our condition is marginal rate of product transformation, Q2 into marginal rate of product transformation of Q2 into Q1 should be equal to marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2 for consumer 1, or as we were using, we were calling them consumer A and B. Marginal rate of substitution of consumer A is equal to marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2, Q1 for Q2 for consumer P. So this is my essential conditions. So I have my essential conditions as MRS of A should be MRS of B, marginal rate of substitution, to meet this condition of efficiency in consumption. Then marginal rate of technical substitution of P1 should be equal to marginal rate of technical substitution of P2 for efficiency in production. And for efficiency in product mix, the condition that I have derived is marginal rate of product transformation of Q2 into Q1 should be equal to marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2 for consumer A should be equal to marginal rate of substitution of Q1 for Q2 for consumer P. So this is my essential condition to meet efficiency in product mix. So these are the graphs and conditions for Pareto optimality. If you have any doubts, any queries regarding any of these curves, you can go through our playlist. The link will be provided in the description box. And if there is something that you are not understanding, then you can leave it in comments box. We'll try to cover those issues that you are not comfortable with. And remember one thing, we are taking these concepts in a way so that we could understand what is happening. We are not so much concerned about the conditions, because these conditions will definitely follow. But if I could understand what is happening in this graph, what is this IQ 41, IQ 12, what is this IQ 31, what is this IQ 22, how is P better than Q, how is Q better than P, how are P and Q better than R? If we could understand these conditions, then definitely we could go in for derivations also. So this was it for Pareto optimality. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Here you see some cards related to the video you just watched. Feel free to browse across them. Please do leave your queries and suggestions in the comments section below. We would try to address them and learn from them. And do press the subscribe button below if you have not already subscribed. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.